And we're live. Welcome, folks, to the MongoDB Podcast Live. An exciting show today. We're going to be talking with our friends at 3T Software Labs. 3T Software Labs will have one of the founders, Thomas Zahn, joining us. Richard Collins, the Chief Marketing Officer, and the one and only John Lynn, my brother, who has written a book. It's called The Field Guide. The 3T Studio Field Guide to MongoDB Aggregation. I'm really excited to have you join us today. As you come into the stream, let us know where you're from. Where are you joining the stream from today? I'm positioned just on the tip of the United States on the East Coast, looking out my window at the ocean, and I can see the Atlantic Ocean. Where are y'all coming from? Where are you joining from today? Hey, Jackie. Great to have you joining the stream. Anisha. What's up, Prakash? All right. So today's going to be an exciting show. As I mentioned, we've got our friends from 3T Studio, 3T Software Labs joining us. There's a new book called the Studio 3T Field Guide to MongoDB Aggregation. And if you're joining me today, let us know what your experience is with the MongoDB Aggregation Framework. Are you familiar with it? You're going to get more familiar with it today as we've got some experts joining us to talk about not only MongoDB Aggregation Framework, but about Studio 3T and 3T Software Labs. I'm so excited to have you joining us. Costa Rica, Togo, welcome. Welcome from India. All right, great to have you all joining us today. Let's get right into it. So I'm going to bring our guests in for today. Very excited to welcome Thomas, Richard, and John to the stream today. Welcome all. Thomas, you are the co-founder and CEO of 3T Software Labs.
That's right. Yes. Thanks for having me. Yes, my name is Thomas Zahn. I'm based in Berlin, and as you said, I'm a co-founder and the CEO of 3T Software Labs. I am also an engineer by training and very much by passion, and that's sort of how this whole thing got started as well.
Fantastic. So we'll get into that a little bit more. Richard, you're joining us also from Europe. Where in Europe are you?
I'm in Cambridge, UK.
Okay. And Richard, what's your role? Tell the folks who you are and what
I'm
you do.
the Chief Marketing Officer at 3T, and I've been working with Thomas for some years, 8 years or so. They're based in Berlin, and I pop over to Berlin quite often, and we work together there in the extremely swanky offices in Prenzlauer Berg.
Ah, beautiful. Haven't been myself, but hope to. And last but not least, my very own brother, John Lynn. How are you?
Yes, my dear brother. Good to see you. Good to be here.
To see you as well. Yeah, so we're going to talk today about the 3T Field Guide to the MongoDB Aggregation Framework. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the company 3T and how this came to be. Thomas, once again, thanks so much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to start 3T Software Labs.
Yeah, as I said, I'm actually a software engineer by training, and this goes back all the way to actually January 2012. And at the time, my co-founder Graham Thompson and I were working for a different company based in Berlin. It's actually a hardware company. It basically built digital fitness devices that had a Microsoft Kinect and would track people doing their exercises. As you can imagine, it produced vast amount of data. And so the first, and amongst many other things, Graham and I were tasked with building a software platform around this. And of course, the first thing you ask yourself when you do that, well, we're going to store all of that data. And then Graham pointed out, there's this cool new thing. It's called MongoDB. We should really check it out. And we did. And what can I tell you? We absolutely fell in love with it, head over heels. It was, as Graham always likes to say, it was a breath of fresh air. From an engineering point of view, you could actually store all the data that you have in your application exactly like you have it in your application in your documents. You no longer have to split your data across 400 different two-dimensional tables with artificial foreign keys and all that sort of stuff. No, you could actually store it exactly as you have it in the application. We absolutely loved it. And and so we started working with that. And there was just this one little minor thing, tooling at the time was pretty much non-existent. And at the time, we were also big fans of the type of database tooling that that Redgate, for example, built in the conventional SQL space.
Mhm.
And we kept saying, man, if only someone came and built that sort of tooling for MongoDB, that'd be the best. And we kept saying this, but no one really did, at least not seriously. And then later in 2013, through a personal network, an angel investor actually popped up, and we didn't think twice about it. We just went for it and built 3T Software Labs. Our mission was very clear. We just wanted to build world-class tooling for the MongoDB space, specifically designed with MongoDB in mind. And that's what we did. And that's
The
what we
birth
have.
of a company. Yeah, that's exciting. So 3T, where does the name come from?
Actually, good question. So initially, we were 3 founders, actually, and we all had some variation of Thomas in our name. My name is obviously Thomas Zahn, and Graham's last name is Thompson, and our third co-founder's first name was Tomasz. And so 3T, that's what we did. And after we incorporated the company, when to a bar, celebrate, and a pint or two in, we thought, we got to have a logo for the company as well, and we got to have an animal for it. And then, of course, it's a manatee, because what else rhymes with 3T, 3T manatee.
Oh, that's great. Brilliant. Terrific. And then, so Richard, what is your story around 3T? When did you join?
I started working with Thomas and Graham in, I think, back end of 2015. I came over for a week and then started working full time in 2016. I actually ran the marketing at Redgate prior to that for some years, and so it was through a mutual contact that I got put in touch with Thomas and Graham. So yes, I mean, we essentially launched Studio 3T in 2017. Prior to that, it was called Mongo Chef, and we rebranded it. And
I remember Mongo Chef. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe a few others with Mongo in the name as well. But we chose to rebrand as Studio 3T because it's got that nice studio sound, a bit like Visual Studio or what have you. And it's a big, rich kind of studio with loads of things in it, loads of levers to pull and buttons to press. And
yeah,
stuff.
It is quite impressive. And for the folks listening, if you haven't checked out Studio 3T, it's kind of a GUI for MongoDB, right? Similar in function to Compass. It's got a few different options. But so as the chief marketing officer, maybe provide an overview. What is Studio 3T? How does it work? And how do people begin to use it and get value from it?
It's a GUI. We also call it an IDE because it is richer than just a user interface. And it's a way of visually representing your data, and then enabling you with a variety of tools to interrogate that data, whether you're connected to Atlas, to a hosted cluster on Atlas, or whether it's a local instance on-prem. Yeah, and I mean, our fundamental kind of design principle is that the team has a bunch of different skills. You've got the admin or the ops guys with certain skills, probably in SQL language, and then you've got engineers who probably know JavaScript, Mongo Shell, and then you might have sales engineers or product managers who maybe don't know as much code or don't have any code. So we try and provide a different tool for each one, so that everybody can work in the same space and have a single view on the data.
Yeah, great, terrific. And so, John, you were the one that introduced MongoDB to me well prior to my coming to work at MongoDB. You wrote a little book called was it an intro? What was the title to the book on the aggregation framework? The first book you wrote. Well, so you're on mute. There you go.
The MongoDB Aggregation Framework Principles and Examples. A nice wordy title there.
That was my first introduction to MongoDB. I was working at another software company at the time, and I had used MongoDB very minimally, but that gave me an introduction to the flexibility and power of the MongoDB Aggregation Framework. So how did you get hooked up with the folks at 3T?
Well, I started using MongoDB back when there were really not a lot of examples. And, I've heard it said that, the best way to learn is to teach, right? So I took it that first book was really just me trying to teach myself and my teammates at the time, just by creating a bunch of little examples, and it was very helpful. And in that book, that's an old book. It's like maybe 4 or 5 years old now. There's no tooling. I really just used the shell
Hmm.
and a little bit with Notepad plus, I think, because there was no tooling really. And then this Studio 3T came out, and it was like, wow, just a night and day, really, as
Yeah.
far as working with the aggregation framework, among everything else MongoDB. So I just fell in love with it, basically.
Terrific. And then so you had written a book prior on the aggregation framework. And how did you start working with 3T on the field guide?
Well, this book that was sort of getting long in the tooth, and it needed a new edition. So, I forget, somewhere along the line, I ended up speaking with Richard about working on a new edition, and that's what's sort of sparked it into what you see now.
Yeah. Terrific.
It was quite a while ago, I think, John, wasn't it?
It was a long time.
2 or 3 years back, maybe, when we first kicked off the idea.
Yes, and it was kind of slow going. It was sort of a side effort, but
yeah. So we've got this brand new book, and it talks about how to leverage the MongoDB aggregation framework, and it obviously it's going to talk about use of MongoDB and use of the framework, the tools built into 3T Studio. So if you're listening, you're watching the stream, and you want to dive in and take a look, there's a link on the screen. It's mdb.link/3t. It's a landing page there. You can get access to links and resources there. There's going to be a link to the 3T field guide to MongoDB aggregation. Check out that. And the book is free. Is that correct? Yeah. So it's freely downloadable. You can download it in electronic format. Take a look at that. And then, so what about the tools from 3T? What is the revenue model? How are they pay? Are there free versions?
Yes, we have a free version, which has IntelliShell in it and various other tools. And then there are 3 levels of commercial product with additional tools.
Mm-hmm. Great. So John, you want to talk a little bit about the book? What are some of the highlights of the book, and what can people expect if they're going to download it and start to learn about the MongoDB aggregation framework?
Okay, hold on one second. I can bring up the book on my screen, and if you like,
Sure.
we can sort of look at the. How do I do that? Let's see. Present. Is that where I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. There we go. And let me know when you can see the book. Can you see that?
No. Okay, so
Am I presenting?
no. So you hit present and then share screen.
Share screen. Sorry.
There you go.
Share screen. I don't know. Oh, there we go. Whew. Okay. Okay. Now you just see what I'm seeing, right?
We see the Studio 3T field guide, and for folks listening to the podcast audio, we're going to take a look at the Studio 3T field guide to MongoDB aggregation. All right.
Exactly. Actually, for the 3T folks, I have a question on this. The beautiful illustration on the cover.
It is beautiful.
Can you guess where it is? Special prize for anyone who's listening in.
We'll give them we'll give them some swag.
Yes, what a good idea.
Well, I see mountains in the distance, but
it's an unusual combination, isn't it?
Can that actually be a real? That's not a colorized picture.
Nope, it's a real picture.
Amazing.
Oh wow, is it?
All right, so if you have a guess as to where that picture is from, if you're watching the live stream, unfortunately, if you're listening to the podcast audio, it'll be after the fact anyway. But if you're watching the live stream, let us know where you think that beautiful farmscape with wonderful colors.
We picked it, John, because it's the field guide, and in the field are these aggregations of color. So you got the pink aggregation and the red aggregation. That was the thinking behind it.
Okay, we have a guess from Anurag. We've got the guesses coming in now.
Okay, cool.
We'll give it a couple more minutes before we disclose the answer.
It is beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the book.
So, see, the book is the main goal here is to just illustrate examples that show different parts of the aggregation framework using, of course, the Studio 3T aggregation editor. So, we start off with an introduction to MongoDB aggregation, and then pretty much just go into some examples. I tried to find good real world examples of things that you might need to do, like in analyzing data. So, actually, you know what? If I could, can I change what I'm sharing here?
Yeah.
Let's see. Stop sharing, because I want to share other stuff.
Sure.
Let me do that again. Present, share. I'm learning how to use this interface. Entire screen, right? Does that work?
Sure.
Yes. Okay. So are you back to my screen again?
Nope. We can't see anything.
Not yet. How about now?
Nope. Present share screen.
Oh boy. Slow going here, folks.
It's all
Wait,
good.
where's my oh, okay. Share. Sorry. There's always that last step, Share.
There we go.
Got it. Yep. So I just wanted to point out the place where the data that I'm showing is available in sample data sets, which you can install in your Atlas free cluster, and the book explains how to do that. Or you can, if you don't have an Atlas cluster, which you can get for free, you can also install these same sample data sets on your local machine, just to do, with your own installation of MongoDB. So the idea behind that is what you're seeing in the book as examples, you can actually get the same data and run the same examples.
Yeah.
So
that's key. So what you're saying is that first of all, MongoDB Atlas is our free database as a service in the cloud. If you're not familiar with it, you can head on over to cloud.mongodb.com and create an account, launch a completely free instance. No need to pull out a credit card. They are sized instances beginning at M0, M for MongoDB, 0 for the very bottom tier. It's going to be a shared instance, but it's completely free. And it'll have some limitations like the amount of storage and the fact that it's a shared CPU. And you can launch that and run it for free. As part of the setup, there'll be a wizard that walks you through the process of deploying and adding a network rule to allow access from your machine. And you'll also be prompted to load those sample data sets, right? That's key. Oh, did you mute yourself? There you go.
If you'd rather go local, there is a way. I believe it's right on the MongoDB site on how to create your own local copies of the same sample data. Yeah.
Yep. Terrific.
And this is all in the book. There's links to where to go to do that sort of thing. So using that sample data, we just go through and just make examples. Like there's the coupon example. There's the weather example, and it's really just step by step, follow along type examples that you can then execute. And in doing so, also show the really cool features of the aggregation editor and what all is possible to actually debug and develop in Studio 3T.
So this is the thing about the MongoDB Aggregation Framework. If you're familiar with Unix or with command line on the Mac, one of the key features is that pipes exist. You can take the output of one command and pipe that to the input of the next command. And the MongoDB Aggregation Framework works very much in the same way. So doing that from command line, it can be quite cumbersome. Obviously, the power is there for the aggregation framework, but you'll need to string together each operator, piping the output of one operator into the input of the next. And the key thing about Studio 3T is that it simplifies this in a way. Either Richard or John, do you want to explain how that works?
Thomas, I think, would be
Thomas, yeah.
Me.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, in fact, one of the first things that we built into Studio 3T was exactly this thing, the aggregation builder. Because when we first come to MongoDB, running an aggregation query, that's super powerful stuff, but it takes a different approach than what you might be used to when you're coming from SQL. And I always thought that one of probably the most underrated features of the aggregation pipeline is the fact that that is so easy to debug, right? If you imagine a sufficiently complex SQL query, you type that in, you submit it, and then chances are that the output is maybe not what you had in mind. And then what you do, you start commenting out stuff. If there's a subquery, maybe you pull that out, run that individually, see what that results in. But with the MongoDB aggregation query pipeline, you can actually step through this. What is the output of one stage, and how does it actually flow into the next stage? That is just fantastic stuff. It makes it so easy to debug. And that is what we had in mind when we first built this. As I said, that was one of the first tools that we built into Studio 3T. We give you an editor tab for each stage. And in that tab, or on that tab, you see down at the bottom, I'm sort of explaining that for people listening in, two data panes, one for the input and one for the output of that stage. And you can just quickly run this, and then you see exactly, what's the data that's actually coming in here, and then what happens in that stage, what's the data that goes out. And yeah, so that's how we build it. Easy debuggability in mind, and it remains to this day one of our most popular features.
Yeah, I love that you can see both the input, the actual stage operator, and then the output. So you can really, you can begin to understand exactly what's happening with the data and manipulation. Great for analytics. So John, what are some of the operators that you're featuring in the book and explaining?
Oh, well, let's see. I covered the basics like project and unwind with examples, and in the examples, I show like what happens in that aggregation editor. For example, we're showing the input here, and then the resulting output from this stage here, really, it's really a powerful concept to be able to see that, because you can adjust and refresh these panes until you get the results you're after. So I go into all the favorites, like sort by count and different things, but I also go into custom stages, such as well, let's see, there's hold on, let me see here. A lot's on group, project, the group operators, how to make your own custom operators using accumulator. With an example of that. So it runs the gamut from the basics all the way through to pretty sophisticated things. I also cover things like facet and bucket. And
Facet's fantastic if you're in the retail space, right? Developing a faceted search.
Yep.
Yeah.
Facet, in my case, I used facet to run multiple pipes with within one stage. Pretty interesting there. And then all the different means of getting outputs, such as out and merge, and well.
So Richard, while you're going through that, John, Richard, I understand you have a favorite.
It's just because it's funny because it is my favorite because the first programming language I learned was Perl back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an operator in Perl called the spaceship operator, which was less than, equals, and greater than, and it does exactly the same thing. But it's just such a sweet sweet. It's called $sort by count. And so we use it for onboarding people into the marketing team. We ask them to demo using the aggregation editor, and can they answer this one question? And do they manage to find this single operator that just aces the query every time?
You think we could get you to demo?
I could, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Right.
Let me just make sure I've got Studio 3T open, and then come back. Perhaps while I'm just setting it up, Thomas, were there any particular challenges, because you personally created the aggregation pipeline editor, didn't you, in Studio 3T? I mean, you were the engineer.
Yeah, that's right. So the challenge is obviously about, what do you present to the user at which point? Do you just have one big tree or scrollable composite with all your stages in there, or do you go for individual tabs? And the user feedback that we got was, people would like to see the full stage and then input and output to it, and that's how we designed it. Yeah.
Thomas, what is it written in?
It's actually written in Java, top to bottom, which gives us really good performance, especially for the tasks that will run in the background. And it's really all about performance. And Java just gave us the right balance for that.
So if you're listening in, we're looking at 3T Studio, or Studio 3T Ultimate, and we're watching Richard set up to demonstrate sort by count. And it does look Eclipse-like. Right, I guess that's intentional.
Yeah, it is actually built on the Eclipse framework, which gave us portability between the three major operating systems right from the start. That's how we chose it. Okay,
great. So what are we going to see, Richard?
I'm just going to show how to do probably the simplest aggregation of all, but I'm going to use this collection here called British Pubs. Which we use quite a bit for training and for educational materials. And you can see down the bottom here, it says there are 51,778 documents in there. So basically 52,000 pubs in Britain listed out with all their names, their postcode, their zip codes, their addresses, and where they are in Britain, and so on.
Why are there so many?
Why are there so many?
That's more than there are people in Britain.
It probably is. So let me just so here we've opened it up in the collections tab, and you can view either a tree view, which shows you all of the different documents, or you can look at the JSON view, which I think, John, you were looking at earlier. But for this purpose, let's use the table view, which is the one most like an Excel spreadsheet. And then you just go ahead and open the aggregation editor. And the question which I like to ask people, who are joining and are doing a demo, is to say, well, we've got this all of this data, all of these 52,000 pubs, but which name is the most popular pub name in Britain, do you think? I mean, there's lots of possibilities, aren't there? I mean, there's famously the King's Arms is one that you might come across. But the best and simplest way to do this, I mean, you can do it in a complicated, with multiple stages, but the best way is to use $sort by count. And then you simply add the name of the field called name, and then you run it. Well, so you run the input, so that's all of the data. Then stage output, you run $sort by count, and there it is.
So powerful.
The Red Lion, 201 pubs called the Red Lion. But there are also another 128 just called Red Lion with no the. But then you can see the actual. So using query code, then you can see the actual Mongo shell that's created by that aggregation.
See, this is what I love. I love a tool that can not only help me understand and analyze the data. Yes, it's a tool that can not only help me understand and analyze the data. Yes, it's a great tool to do that. It's going to give me the end result, which is an understanding of the data, right? It answered the question, what is the most popular name? And it did that through the use of the aggregation framework. But not only that, it also gives me the aggregation command structure, the syntax for that. But then it takes it further, doesn't it?
It does. Well, I mean, once you've got the aggregation, then, I mean, if you're running drivers, maybe in Java, maybe in C#, we just have automatic code generation for all those different languages.
Yeah. So that was a question early on in the stream. Someone asked, well, this is sort of related, and I'm going to put it up. Maybe we can address it. Is MongoDB Compass or Robo3T? We're talking about, so they're mentioning other product names, but today we're talking about Studio 3T. So we'll answer it in that context. Is there going to be an option where one can manage structuring a collection or a Mongoose schema in the case of Node.js?
That's one for Thomas.
I'm not entirely sure what is meant by that.
Yeah, I think it's around generation of schema for a particular. So I don't know. I've used Mongoose. We've had Val on the show, the maintainer of the Mongoose, and it's a wonderful ODM, object document modeler. And one of the things that is helpful is if you can generate not only syntax for MongoDB queries, like you've demonstrated, Richard, but also what if you could generate schema? Is there anything built into Studio 3T that will help with that?
Not at the moment. It's a great suggestion. We've actually seen that before. Now that I remember that, and there is probably an open ticket on our forum there. And if people vote for that, then we'll obviously bump up the priority of implementing that.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so this brings me to the question around what's next. What's in the pipeline? Pardon the pun.
There's plenty of things. We've got tons of ideas for tools in the MongoDB space. Our pipeline is brimful, but just let me maybe point out two concrete examples. So one area that we're really focused on right now is around team collaboration. We got tons of user feedback in that space, and that's we're just putting the finishing touches to that. And this is something we're going to be releasing later in Q2. We'll give people the chance or the opportunity to share, for example, queries, connection settings, connection coloring, nodes, annotations, aliases for maybe automatically generated collections, all with your team members, and with the idea that this will make it easy for entire teams to collaborate on stuff, to maybe standardize on certain naming conventions. So that's one of the big things that's coming out later in Q2. And then actually hot off the press, we'll be releasing later this week, probably on Thursday actually, an integration with ChatGPT. So this will work in IntelliShell, and we'll be connecting to your ChatGPT account, and you can type in your natural language query, and we'll parse that. We'll prime the engine a bit by telling what the context of this really is, and then we run it. We transmit it to ChatGPT, to your own account, and the result comes back. We parse that. We present it in IntelliShell, and I think that's some of the stuff that I've seen there is absolutely mind blowing. And not only does it make querying in IntelliShell faster, it also allows people that are maybe not so familiar just yet with the MongoDB query language to just get going, right, without a lot of overhead. And I just believe that actually, Richard, you may have a demo for us on this.
Well, you know what it's like. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But the AI helper, I'll just show you. We'll use the same collection, the British Pubs collection, and here we are in IntelliShell, and you click on AI helper, and it asks you to select source. So you need to select which collection you're running the question against. And here we have the British Pubs again. And then it just says, describe your query using natural language. So let's ask the same question. What is the most popular pub name in Britain? No,
There are a couple typos in there.
There are a couple of typos. What what is the most popular pub? Nasmi in Britain. Here we go. So I hope everyone can see that. It's just a straight English sentence. You could write it in German or Spanish if you want. And then you click generate query. It hops off to GPT with the details, and it comes back with the code, and you press run, and there it is, the red lion. Not bad, huh?
That is impressive. That is so impressive. So I like the implementation too, Thomas. You've made a choice. You've not only given users of Studio 3T the ability to leverage AI in the tool, but you're exposing it through their own. So I can connect my ChatGPT token. I'm assuming it's token based.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That was a very deliberate decision. This is, obviously we're mindful of people's privacy, and obviously we want people to feel comfortable and know that they're running this on their own account. There'll be no sharing with other people out there, and it's just very convenient that way, right? You just enter your token, we do all the priming of the engine for you, we send it over, and it's right there in Studio 3T ready for you to run.
And so from a security perspective, the token is embedded in the tool, and the transmission from 3T Studio from my laptop where I'm running the user interface to ChatGPT, that will all be encrypted in flight as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We have a question.
I'll just run this other one while we're at it, which there's a question: which regions in Britain have the most pubs named the Royal Oak? So the Royal Oak is a popular pub name.
There you go.
It's actually a popular pub name because the King Charles II hid in an oak tree while the Roundhead Puritans were hunting them down. And hid. But so the ChatGPT has sent back the code to the question. We'll run it. And there you go. These are the regions. And that's actually accurate. It says Northwest has the most pubs called Royal Oak, because that's actually in Shropshire in the Northwest, which is where King Charles II did hide.
Incredible. So we do have a question from Anurag. Regarding the sort by count, is it more performant than using $match on name, then $group on ID, null, sum one, and then final stage of limit? So I guess the question is which of these approaches would be more performant, the sort by count or leveraging the individual operators in an aggregated pipeline?
I'm not an expert.
Okay.
Thomas would have a better call on that, or maybe John.
I didn't write the MongoDB query execution engine, but I would assume, I don't know for certain, but I would assume that running the individual operator is probably faster because you don't actually need to shift data from one stage into the next. But that's just an educated guess.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I hope that answered your question, Anurag. And so I want to close the loop here. Now we mentioned the beautiful photograph of the field on the cover of the 3T field guide. Let's see.
Shall I stop screen and stop sharing so then John can put the book cover back up so we can see it?
Sure. We've got several guesses. We've got Iceland, we've got Japan, Hokkaido, Greenland, Netherlands. Do we want to select one of these at random? First of all, let's let folks know where that field is in the world.
Someone has it, right? It's in Hokkaido in Japan.
Hokkaido.
It's a small town called Bie.
Okay, Peter Haglund, Hokkaido.
Very good.
Peter, I'm going to try and connect with you on LinkedIn. Watch out for my connection request. We're going to get you a MongoDB podcast T-shirt.
For full transparency, we should mention out that Peter actually works for our team. I'm not sure whether you've actually told him that already, Richard, or whether this was a genuine guess.
It's a genuine guess.
Okay, let's see.
The only other person who knew was our book designer, Ilaria. So that is a guess.
That is a genuine guess. All right, okay.
Okay, all right. Well, that's great. Well, thanks for playing along, folks. All right. John, I don't know if you want to show that field one more time. You're on mute there. There we go.
I thought I was showing it. No?
There we go. Yeah, let me add it to the stream. There we go. There's the beautiful. It's not an illustration. It's a photograph, right? That is quite incredible.
And this is Japan, you said, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, place called BA.
That's nice.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'll go to you first, John. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience about the book? Maybe something that that we haven't covered that you want to make sure folks know about?
Well, I mean, I think, I think we pretty much covered most of what's in the. It's a pretty simple book. It's not that long. It's got a lot of great examples, and it's good to just.
How long did it take you to write the book?
let's not talk about that. No, it's like, well, it was like evenings and weekends type of thing.
Yeah.
So it took a while. It took over a year, I think.
Wow. Okay.
And during that time, MongoDB releases were coming out, and also Studio 3T releases were coming out. So I mean, there's a lot. It's a dynamic product in both.
It's a moving target, a bit of a moving target, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's one of only a couple books out there on MongoDB aggregation. So it's just another way. It's another viewpoint. It's more Studio 3T focused, but it's a great way to get moving. Just follow the examples and have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. So folks learning MongoDB, there are several ways to do this. I mean, MongoDB University is a great place to start, but learning the aggregation framework is a little bit different. It's a kind of a nuance, maybe a specialization. Why would someone want to dive into the aggregation framework as opposed to just learning MongoDB queries?
It's interesting. I spoke to our head of engineering, Stefan Weiss, once to ask him, so how do you compare, what's the difference between a find query and an aggregation? He said, well, find queries, it's in the name. It will pull out an answer from the data that's already there. Aggregations actually it creates new sets of data because it creates new relations between the existing sets of data, which I think is a really good way of looking at it. That's what makes it so powerful. It's interesting because we have a number of customers who are heavy users of the aggregation editor, and they are very often in sports data, live sports data for live feeds. So, for example, from NASCAR or from the NBA, when they're wanting to aggregate data about an individual performance and get it live onto screens across the country, they do these massive aggregations, like 30 stages long, which is just firing away at high speed as fast as the cars going around the track. And no, I mean, it's a very powerful device.
Yeah.
And as a framework, it just allows you to create things that no one has even thought of before. It's truly a framework because you can use it to augment and create things that don't exist. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I love that.
In fact, the editor, DJ Walker Morgan, who worked closely with John on this, always had in his mind a kind of metaphor that doing aggregations is like a factory, like a huge factory where you have the raw materials come in one end, and then each stage is a different step in the process. So you have maybe you bring in some raw coffee beans and then you put them in a soaker to clean them, and then you pull them out into stage 2 as the roaster, and then maybe the grinder, and eventually you end up with a fabulously strong cup of coffee. But it's a bit like that. You enact processes on the data.
Yeah,
I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, fantastic.
Actually, that's reflected here in the book. DJ had a lot to contribute in these sections.
He did, yeah.
Oh, the production line metaphor.
Yes,
that's the one. Yeah,
yeah, terrific. Well, I hope folks listening will take a peek at the book. Again, it's free, and the link is on the screen now. It's db.link/3t. There's going to be a link there to the download page. Take a look at that. How is the book performing, Richard? Do we have
It's
a
good.
number of folks?
It's very good. No, we've had just about over 1,000 copies downloaded and read in great detail by everybody. Yeah, no, it will continue, I think, for some while, because this actually theoretically is John's 3rd edition. Am I right, John?
Yeah, you could call it that. Yes.
I mean, the first edition of your framework was about 5 years ago, right? And then you did a small update about 3 years ago, and this is the 3rd edition. So,
right.
Like tree rings, it's a big solid oak that's growing over the years.
We are metaphor thick today.
Sorry, I'm mixing them.
It's all good. Thomas, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience about 3T, about the book, or anything?
No, just let me just second that. Go download the book. It's a great read. Have a look at Studio 3T. As I said, there are so many things in 3T. In Studio 3T, we've got so many other things in the pipeline, constantly releasing new stuff from MongoDB. Go check it out.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm really super excited to see now, did you call it the AI assistant?
AI helper.
AI helper, yeah. So I'm excited to see that.
Go and have a go with it. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's immense fun.
Yeah.
It really is.
So,
little tweaks to the original natural language question can produce quite a big different result in the code. It's really interesting.
AI, just fascinating. It's changing the landscape of computing. I'm curious, while I have you, Thomas, do you want to share your thoughts on what you see next, where these worlds collide? AI, data, software.
That's a really good question. I'm by no means an AI expert, but what we're probably going to see is a lot more of these integrations where where these AI connections are established and help people get to the data that they have in mind, as assistants, that sort of stuff, as a means to just expedite tasks in general. That's where I think this is going. But as I'm not an AI expert by any means. But we're also in Studio 3T evaluating other places outside IntelliShell where we could integrate this in a meaningful way. And it's just there's just so many opportunities, and it's really quite exciting.
It truly is. Yeah. Well, great. Once again, thanks, folks, for joining us. If there's nothing else, I think we'll sign off. Thanks, everybody.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for having us, Mike. It's been really fun.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Okay.